Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to another Mobile Ecosystem Forum live webinar. The topic at hand today is combating SMS fraud, why and how our fighting style has to change. But first of all, a bit of background. If you are new to MEF, have never attended one of our live webinars, a particularly warm welcome to you. The Mobile Ecosystem Forum had its 21st birthday on February the 4th. We are not-for-profit, mobile-oriented industry body, and at the end of the day, members are here to help grow their brand presence, ultimately grow their businesses, all whilst growing their ecosystem and doing this in a sustainable way, protecting the consumer. Now that element, protecting the consumer, has been central to our ethos from day one, from our very, very inception. The idea actually, when MEF was put together by 5 companies, ultimately 22 years ago when the idea came around, and in the 20+ years that MEF has been working, the community of members has really got together and pulled together to combat fraud across so many channels. SMS is just one of those. If you look at our membership, we've got 155 members from all over the world. 106 of those are members of what we call the Future of Messaging program. So think of anything messaging, we talk about that, that's part of it. And the fraud and revenue assurance piece is a very, very big part of that. I'm pleased to say that MEF has a trust in enterprise messaging program, and 40 MEF members, we had the 40th actually sign up today, have signed up to that program. So ultimately, we are here to talk about everything SMS fraud, what we as a community need to do to collaborate and get together to stamp it out. And I'd like to extend a very warm hand and thanks to Lanck Telecom, who've been with MEF a good long time. And thank you for sponsoring this webinar. So let's, without further ado, introduce our speakers. Let's start with Lanck. And let's go to Mr. Vladimir Smile. Vladimir, take it away. Introduce yourself, sir.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. My name is Vladimir Smile, and I'm Head of Sales and Procurement and Global Messaging at Lanck Telecom.
Fantastic, thank you. So it's an interesting role you have because you look at both ends of the spectrum. And indeed, Vladimir appeared on our last webinar when we were looking at the whole area of international commercial models in SMS. So thank you. And we also have Igor Skutsenia from Lanck, and your job is very, very apt to what this webinar is about, is it not, sir?
It is. Thank you very much, James. Very glad to be here. I will be kind of representing the fraud overview from the view of Lanck Telecom, and I also have some statistics to share. So very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, because fraud is what you do. It's your daily job. Or put it this way, anti-fraud, shall I say? Yeah, it's your job. It's the old joke in this, isn't it? But there we go. But it really, really is. So we've got that. Yeah. So thank you. So that's Lanck. Now, also staying within your area, we have Larissa Rindick from Intis Telecom. Larissa, introduce yourself and Intis. Go for it.
Yeah, hello. I'm an SMS routing and procurement director at Intis Telecom, so I know what exactly and where we send it, and pretty much everything about SMS routing. And since we deal with enterprises directly, I know how hard it is to work with all kinds of fraud.
Yeah, exactly. So I know you're particularly specialist on the SME side of things and have a lot of customers in the region you're very, very strong in. Joining us also today is David Vigar from Twilio. David, great to have you with us.
Thank you, and good to be here. So I'm David. I work in the carrier relations team as a business development director within Twilio. We're one of the world's leading consumer engagement platforms.
Fantastic. And David, I've known for many years. You started off, you were Tele2, a mobile operator. You've also spent time with Google, so you've seen it from a large enterprise perspective too. And now, of course, you're with Twilio, so you can bring perspective from all 3 angles, which is great. Joining us also is Mr. Rajiv Singla. Rajiv, hi, welcome.
Hey James, hello everyone. I am Rajiv, and I'm taking care of technology and the business messaging in Global Teleservices. And we are trying to put in a lot of efforts to stop all these frauds and phishing in the SMS industry so that we can keep it for a longer time.
Fantastic. So, Globe, you're based in India, and I think you're back from Goa now because you went on. The whole company went on a trip celebrating your 10th anniversary. So, congratulations on your 10th anniversary. And last but by no means least is Mr. Kevin Graham, someone I've known actually since 2013 because I did work with him at Jersey Telecom when I started there in September 2013 on a project in, believe it or not, the area of A2P SMS. So, Kevin, we've never actually been on a webinar together, so great to have you speaking here. Hi.
It's great to be here. Thank you, James. So my name's Kevin Graham. I'm the General Manager for Messaging within the carrier function at Vonage, and we're one of the world's leading CPaaS, CCaaS and UC providers. Really looking forward to talking about this topic today. It's something very close to my heart, working closely with carriers on a daily basis. And as Rajiv said, I think it's a topic that we need to invest a little bit more time in because this will guide, I guess, and lead us into kind of the next stage of the development of our market here. And it's important that we tackle this important issue.
Yeah, it is, because it's a super fast growing market. And I will let now Igor and Vladimir take it away with a presentation to really set the scene before we launch into our discussion. So take it away, chaps, go for it and share your screen, feel free.
Okay, I hope you can see my screen.
We can.
Okay, great. So once again, hello everyone. So our topic today is combating SMS fraud, why and how our fighting style has to change. So fact number one, there is more and more fraud in SMS these days. And we as an international aggregator and an active player in the SMS industry, we can literally see it happening every day. So what are the major factors which led to the fraud outbreaks in SMS? First, of course, there is more and more players in the market, and some of them are fraudsters, which we might actually not know. And it's really hard now to control the use of white truths and to control the whole chain of players on how the message is being sent from the enterprise or brand towards a consumer. Secondly, as we already mentioned, A2P SMS market is naturally growing. It's growing very fast. And as we discussed 2 weeks on the other webinar about commercial models, the international A2P SMS rates are growing. So the revenues in SMS business are huge, and it makes it profitable and I would say tempting for fraudsters to get in and to try to get bite of this cake. Now, because Lanck Telecom is also an international voice carrier, we have a big expertise in handling the voice fraud. And there is, in general, per our knowledge, there is more systems that can detect and alert fraud in voice, while in SMS, many types of fraud are yet not being tackled effectively. So the fraudsters are looking into SMS and to commit fraud, and often using very similar fraud scenarios. So what are the main objectives of fraud in SMS? Of course, we can speak of identity theft, and which is obtaining information about a consumer and then steal his identity. A very common example is phishing, or as we call it in SMS, smishing, and also spoofing, where the sender ID is changed or hidden to some of the well-known brands. Then other objective is data theft. Fraudsters are trying to obtain information about private banking or private financial account of a consumer. And then this is how the fraud is committed. What mobile operators especially consider as fraud is a commercial exploitation, which means that the routes that are used to deliver message are not white, are not let's say, are not the ones that lead to mobile operator in the right way. So this is about gray routes, this is about non-interlocking routes, etc. The fourth one is about network or system manipulation. This is when fraudsters are trying to gain advantage manipulate of the network weakness by manipulating message or exploiting the system vulnerabilities and bypass the protection measures. So this is about SIM farms, this is about global title faking and spam and message thrashing. So if we talk about impacts, which we see that SMS fraud is doing, obviously it is financial impact. Some financial operation might be authorized because fraudsters get control of the mobile number. Then mobile operators are losing revenue because of fraud. There could be stolen banking information due to fraud. So yeah, this is an obvious impact. Secondly, of course, it could be reputational damage, like in case of spoofing. Brand could have a reputational damage because on his behalf the fraud was committed. Third, we have a poor or unreliable quality of service, and then of course consumers are not happy. The messages are delayed or not delivered. Legitimate SMS messages can be ignored because of the previous reason, because of spoofing. So there is loss of trust in business SMS in general. And the customers become more and more unsatisfied about MNOs, about business as a whole, because there is more and more fraud in this channel. Next reason that is being considered is unfair market environment, by which we mean the use of gray routes, and then the competition become less fair, and the aggregators using the white routes might have worse competitive conditions. Because of fraud, regulators are of course taking some actions. So that could result in introduction of mandatory sender registration as an example, or shortcuts in certain countries, which is of course preventing the active growth of SMS market in certain countries. And of course, we shouldn't forget about the breach of data. The protection of data is very important these days. Aggregators can get fines because of this breach. So it's partly a financial impact as well. So now let's look at the business SMS ecosystem map. This is a picture which I took from MEF business SMS framework in regards of fraud. So in the SMS business ecosystem, we have 5 major types of players. First is obviously MNOs or MVNOs. Secondly, we have different messaging providers, such as aggregators or platform providers or telecommunication technology providers. We have different types of businesses, enterprises, brands, OTTs. We have, of course, consumer. And then we have support services such as data security companies, testing companies, firewall suppliers, etc. So now let's speak about the 14 main fraud types in SMS that were listed in the MEF business SMS framework. I don't think I need to mention all of them, but again, I don't have enough time to describe each and every one, each and every of these types. So if you want to know more about each and every type, you can actually look at the document by MEF, which is a business SMS code framework. But then we see here there's a spoofing issue. We have a phishing as a very common type of fraud. We have gray routes and non-networking routes. We have spam. We have global title faking, and so on and so forth. So if we look at the map of SMS fraud, we can see that the main actors, the frauds are actually having impact on all four major players within the industry, within the ecosystem. Different types of fraud incur losses on different types of players. But when we talk about fraud, in most cases, it is something connected to MNOs, like as an example, spam or gray routes or phishing. So MNOs, they know about those issues and they're taking measures in order to fight the fraud. Obviously, most of MNOs are putting in place the firewalls, which are able to detect and block certain types of frauds. So I have also checked the report by Mobile Squared, which was done in last year, which is called MEF Mobile Operators and A2P SMS Report. In this report, 66 operators from Europe, MENA, Latin America, and Asia have participated, and they were answering different blocks of questions. But I just took several questions which I consider the ones that show what is the major concern in terms of SMS fraud from the MNO perspective. So when mobile operators were asked what fraud types are posing the greatest risk for them, they mentioned gray routes, they mentioned SIM farms, and SIM swap fraud. Then the key and the most helpful fraud detection features that they see are actually filtering, data analytics, and data monitoring. The main factors for investing in anti-fraud measures that they see are proactive fraud prevention, and then anything which is related to the revenue assurance, which is a promise of revenues and the guaranteed A2P SMS revenues. As you can see here, mobile operators are mostly concerned about getting the traffic through the white route in securing the revenue streams. and of course in data protection of their consumers, their customers. When they were asked about best anti-fraud industry initiatives that are present nowadays, they mentioned that in most cases sender ID registers, regulation, the increase of regulation, and the codes of conducts, like code of conduct that MEF also has. So I'm putting this here because I wanted to draw attention of the listeners today to a bit different type of fraud, which is something which mobile operators are not concerned, and actually in some cases they might be even they might even take advantage out of this type of fraud. It is not, as per what we see, fully described in the MAF business SMS framework, and we would call it as artificial SMS generation or artificial generated traffic. So what happens here is a rogue third party is trying to imitate the activity that a regular consumer would be performing. So essentially, a consumer is asking an OTP request from an enterprise, from a brand, from an application when they are registering or signing in for that. They would be expecting an OTP to be received on their mobile phone. And then this OTP SMS would go through an aggregator and MNO. Right, this is a normal chain of the message. But when there is a rogue third party, what they are doing, they are actually imitating this activity, and they are faking the activity of a real consumer and requesting for a code to the numbers that they have control of, and when the messages are coming their way through a chain of aggregators, they can actually terminate it and then monetize the revenue received out of this messages. And because as what I have already mentioned, the international A2P SMS rates are growing. Those revenues can actually account for really big numbers. And we can see this activity happening more and more in various destinations, especially in our area, in CIS, but also in Asia and other countries. So what are the key features and the challenges that this artificial SMS generation has? Firstly, it looks like a normal OTP message. It's not spam. So from MNO terminology, it is not fraud. It's just an OTP message. So those SMS, they actually only occasionally reach consumers when the SMS is sent a different way, like a normal, legitimate way, white way, not the one where the rogue party is standing at a link in the chain. And then the bin numbers should also be real, actually, so that the consumer can get. But in many cases, those numbers, they are unassigned or not in use. So the main objective of artificial SMS generation is not data theft, is not SIM swap, but it's rather monetization of traffic from enterprises. MNOs, as I said, do not bear any losses out of this type of fraud, but enterprises and brands, they're paying for fake consumers for fake OTP requests, and then aggregators can be at risk of losing money when those enterprises or brands refuse to pay, when they actually detect that something is wrong, then that there is a customer base that is not real, who are generating those messages. Because the traffic normally doesn't reach MNO, so MNO firewalls are not able to detect this type of fraud. And what is also important is that within the current ecosystem, with the current relationships that we see, artificial traffic generation is not regulated by a common interworking agreement, SMS hub agreement, or any other SMS agreements. So legally, there is no reason for an aggregator in the chain to refuse to pay to their vendor, even if they understand that there was some really suspicious activity while sending the traffic through this vendor. So what needs to be done from our perspective? Of course, the first and one of the most important things is that we need to raise awareness of that this type of fraud is actually does exist. Secondly, we see that there is a need of introduction of anti-fraud measures against this type of fraud, and this is what we are currently working on very much, and we are going to introduce a new solution very soon to the market. As I mentioned, there is a need to work on a common legal practice on how to settle this traffic if we detect this suspicious activity. We suggest to include this type of fraud as a separate one, as a 15th type in MEF business SMS fraud framework. And of course, as long as there is a still limited number of companies that are members of MEF and that are signatories of SMS code of contact, it doesn't work well. So we as a community have to encourage more players to join, and especially we need to encourage enterprises and brands and bigger brands to join us and be part of MEF. So I would like to thank you for listening to that, and just a small reminder that we're coming to MWC, and if anyone of you would like to discuss this topic in detail, here where we are, and you can find us in MWC website and application. So hopefully see many of you there in person. Thank you very much.
Vladimir, thank you very much. Now we're going to be coming to Igor as well, who's going to share your expertise and best practice on this particular issue. But I just wanted to, rather than focus in on this topic, broaden things out and just to clarify things for the viewers and everyone watching. And that's first of all, the massive opportunity at hand. You heard Vladimir talking about the massive opportunity and massive amounts of money at stake here. But this market is worth billions of dollars. SMS, depending on who you talk to, north of $20–25 billion a year. The potential is huge. We hear from other MEF members who are research companies such as Mobile Squared and others that the potential is practically unlimited. You've got $1 trillion being spent on customer support today. You move but a fraction of that to the messaging domain, and hello, it means your A2P messaging and SMS in particular grow significantly. So why do we have these issues of fraud today? First of all, it's an attractive area. There's a lot of money. And I think one thing that we all as an industry have seen is that former, let's say, hardcore people who, bad actors, shall we say, who were making a lot of money hacking enterprises, hacking networks, found actually they turn their attention to this area, they can make a huge amount of money if they do it. So the stakes are very, very high. The reason we have this trouble with SMS in the first place is it was never designed to be two-way. The first SMS was sent on December 3rd, 1992. It was never designed to be two-way. Therefore, there are inherent security issues. But this is why the companies here represented on this panel are fighting fighting the good fight together in a collaborative way. Now, we touched upon various topics there, regulation being one of them. But first of all, before we come to you, Igor, I'd just like to go to Kevin. Kevin, generally, do you think we as an industry as a whole are doing enough to combat fraud in SMS? Very simple, general question.
I think no. The obvious answer is no. What I would say is that I'm not sure we're reviewing the progress that's been made. We've had, I would suggest, probably 7 or 8 years of discussing this agenda now. I don't know how everyone feels about the timelines, but that's how it appears to me. From memory, you talked about when we first started working together, and even then, I think the concept of protecting, first of all, operators, and then probably latterly more so consumers. We're not learning, in my opinion, from some of the progress or lack thereof that we're making in this space. And of course, fraudulent actors, they grow new heads as you chop the old heads off. They're incredibly smart people, and with the increasing cost of A2P messaging in many of the markets, the incentive is there for them. So I think, in answer to your question, no, we're not doing enough, but I would start with a review and reflecting on what's been done so far and whether or not it's been successful, because the old is probably, we've addressed some of the old issues. Some of the newer issues, we might not be adapting quickly enough to them.
Okay, David, your company Twilio, they came from the world. You were launched straight into enterprise messaging from day one, and I know Twilio has worked very closely with developers as well. Do you agree with Kevin, where Kevin's take on the situation, where we are at the moment?
I think, yeah, to an extent. I think that the industry can always do more. And yes, there's always, we can always do better at learning from what's happened in the past. I'm slightly rosier on the progress that has been made, and if I look at the my own experience across the various companies I've worked at in the last 5-10 years, but also the experience of Twilio, is the types of fraud that we see most commonly is evolving over time. If you go back a number of years, and at that time in my role at another developer-focused messaging company, a lot of that was manifested in fraudsters signing up very easily to open API companies because it was very easy to do. I think, and Kevin, I think will probably agree with me, companies like ourselves have done a huge amount of work and invested a huge amount of time, money, energy, and development in improving how we address customer onboarding, making sure that we know who those customers are, that there is a real customer there, that we've done some level of KYC, that we don't give people access to everything from day one, that they earn their trust with our systems and processes. And what I think we've seen is that the instance of fraudsters generating 100 fake accounts on kind of cloud-based messaging providers such as ourselves, I think we've done a very good job of getting on top of that issue largely. I can't stand here and say for certain that doesn't happen today at all, but it's certainly, we're a world away from where we used to be. What we are seeing is, over time, the fraud evolves into other areas, and I think it's good that there was a focus in the presentation on artificially inflated traffic. That, I would say, from what I see, is one of the more common forms, and certainly from a financial point of view, it's probably the most concerning for the industry at this moment in time.
Okay, thank you, David. I'd like to bring Larissa in on this. Larissa, you're very much focused at Intis on the enterprise side of things as well. And how big of an issue is fraud today for you? Have you seen an increase, for example, in the past 2 years? Because I know a lot of our MEF members and beyond, everyone in the messaging community has generally seen an increase in, for example, SMS traffic volumes. But have you seen an increase in fraud as a result as well?
Yes, of course, we can see a lot of artificial traffic generation last year. The growth is amazing. So a great percent of traffic in some countries is artificial, and we are trying to filter it, to work with it, but it's really very hard because it's hard to get to filter this small percent of real traffic.
Okay, so you're seeing the artificial side of things is very big issue in countries. Rajiv, over to you. Generally, across the territories you work in, because I know GTS, you're particularly strong, obviously, where you're around your home country, India, Asia, around there, but also increasingly Africa too, of course, other areas. What's fraud like on the ground with your customers there? And are you seeing this artificial inflation of traffic as well as one of the premier types out there now?
Yeah, I completely agree with Larissa. Like those artificial messages, they are evolving, and like David and Kevin said, with the time, those frauds are also evolving, and we are doing quite enough. Like we have been on to different forums. MEF is working quite strong on making up those registers in UK, in Spain, and in Singapore. We are doing quite enough, but like the fraudsters, they are also increasing, and the frauds are also evolving. Like I was just having a glance through some of those articles last week, and in that, like they are saying, like the frauds are evolving and the fraudsters are also evolving. Yeah, and so in Asia, so it's quite a bit, and basically more into China. We are not able to use our own directs. We are direct with China Unicom, we are direct with China Mobile, but we are not able to use them because there are a lot of frauds coming in, and we don't want to get those disconnections. So it's such a big market of those fraudsters. So that is coming up, and they're just trying to see like how we can do a bypass and keep on giving. Like in voice, they evolved, and they're trying to do that human simulation, like what a human will do when they are using that SIM card in their mobile. And the same way they're trying to do in SMS as well. Like those bots are there to make those artificial accounts on Facebook, and the bots are there to make an artificial accounts on WhatsApp. So whoever those the tier one aggregators, they are connected to all those OTTs. So they are not able to differentiate whether there's a genuine message, like Vladimir was saying in his presentation, like they are not able to find it out whether this is a genuine message or whether this is a generated message.
Okay.
So these are the types of frauds that are coming up. So we are working hard on this one, and definitely with the help of MEF, we'll be closing down some of them.
Well, it's the help of MEF members, because it's you are MEF, the members. Yeah. Well, let's take these. So we went straight in on artificial inflation of traffic. We came out. We're going back in now. We're going in with Igor. So everyone seems to be saying that this artificial inflation of traffic issue is a really growing issue. It's really hurting people's bottom lines in terms of money and profits, but it's super difficult to get a handle on. Do you think from your Lanck perspective, from your technology, from what you're looking at, that we as an industry will be able to find solutions which will really lock down in on this? What's your take on it, and what do you have at Lanck for this?
Well, in terms of industry, I'm very much an optimist. I'm going along with the perspective David just shared. Obviously, we're dealing with a growing budget, with a growing market, with more and more use of SMS being for enterprises. And I just think that obviously the technology is becoming more and more available. It becomes cheaper. It becomes more available both for the good players, the MNOs, service providers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it also is becoming more and more available for the bad actors. Now, the thing is, I think it will be and is about who's learning faster, who's adopting technology faster, and who's being able to adapt and devote resources, more resources, and use them wisely to pursue your goals. I mean, the perspective that are being shared within CFCA, the Anti-Fraud Association that we're glad to be a part of, is that obviously the SMS fraud is growing as a whole. We see the SMS phishing would be it just entered top 10 of all telecommunication frauds that are recognized out there, and we see that the situation is not becoming easier in terms of fraud. but it definitely becomes a better market to be in. So we think that we will see more and more resources to be devoted to the problem of fraud, more and more specialists to be devoting to that. I mean, we see the statistics of how much anti-fraud specialists are employed by a telecom service provider, and it's not a large number, I would say, but we definitely would see more and more budgets in that area, and we will see more effort. We will see more and more sophisticated solutions in that thing, with machine learning, with artificial intelligence being kind of the thing that would be used to battle fraudsters, just like it is now in terms of voice fraud. So I think that the future is bright. I'm optimistic about it.
Okay, you're optimistic. So I know where I am. I've got a smile, but in myself, I'm a bit. Back to Kevin. Kevin, yourself. Now, one thing people have got to remember, for us involved in the industry, we understand the big sums of money in play. But if you look at the 5 broad types of organization involved in our industry, which Vladimir showed from the diagram from the broad framework, the mobile network operators have a big role to play in this, because ultimately they own the route, or should be owning the routes to us, the subscribers. Do you think the mobile network operators have really caught on and understood the opportunity A2P SMS has for them? I'm not talking just in terms of money, but the wider concept of customer stickiness, etc., etc. Have they, or they're really still left to do that?
Yeah, I think there's a growing appreciation within the operator community of the opportunity that A2P represents. Perhaps they might not see the next stage of the development of this industry either, as it progresses towards omnichannel and using other mediums of communication and blending them and giving the user the kind of experience that they demand in today's world. So it's important they don't catch on too late, but I do see the education, the awareness increasing. But I would reiterate, there's still a large proportion of the operator community who doesn't have the benefit of the kind of expertise we've got around the table here today, and I'm sure in the audience. There's an awful lot of operators out there who need more help, need more advice, need more. Igor's just referred to fraud and revenue assurance groups, or increased investment in personnel and knowledge to be able to take the fight to the fraudsters. And some of the operators are only just working out how to make money. So if you work out how to make money, and then the next thing that's going to come is their fraud agenda, as we all bulk up our own fraud, our fraud teams and our provisions to fight fraud. So long answers you always get from me, James, but I do think that the awareness is increasing, and I think everything needs to kind of fit, and everything needs to be brought to kind of, I guess, to the point. I think the appreciation of all of these factors and how they're interreliant needs to be discussed, and operators certainly could do more in that space.
Yeah, so I've been personally in this area for a long time myself, and the one thing, the massive elephant for me in the room, is that actually you look as a percentage of revenue for a mobile operator, typically what A2P SMS commands, you're looking at 1 on a fantastically good day, 2% of all annual revenue. So it's a tiny, tiny part. It's frustrating, I think, for so many parts of the industry, but much of it represented here today, that more attention is not given on this area by some operators. But then you look at the revenue size, it's tiny compared to the rest. So we've got to understand that. And I think it's up to us as an industry to bring it to them that we can collectively help you. And this is what you guys are about, and what MEF is about.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, James. The incentive for us is very different to the incentive for operators who have huge proportions of revenue in other product areas. And as you say, that's down to us to kind of demonstrate how they progress and how they perhaps replace revenues that they're losing. The legacy revenues that operators have been losing for years they're still bleeding. They're still bleeding in those areas. So yeah, it's a valid point.
Yeah, and all of you speaking, all of your companies have the capability to work closely with mobile operators to help on these issues. Now, David, the topic of regulation was mentioned, and I thank you to all of you speakers who are doing a great job of selling MEF and benefits of MEF membership. I haven't had to actually say anything too much about it. But the SMS Sender ID Registry, which is looking at the short code side of things, has been a remarkable success. Basically came out of the blue in Singapore when the regulator mandated use of the SMS Sender ID Registry, which of course has been very, very positive and a very, very good sign from that island state. But from your perspective, David, do you think we as an industry need more regulation, or does regulation not always mean something positive? It's a tough question, I know.
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. I think that regulation has a part to play in this. The challenge is, though, that regulation only doesn't touch upon every part of the ecosystem. It only touches upon those who follow the regulation, those who are bound by the regulation. The challenge we have in the ecosystem we play in is that we're a global industry, and the borders are limitless of who's involved in this industry. I think one of the challenges, even where regulation comes in, there are always going to be players that are outside of the reach and the scope of that regulation, who are going to be bad actors. And unless you have a completely closed ecosystem, which some of these newer IP-based channels are building, I don't see that regulation is going to solve the issue in its entirety. Also, we have to find the right balance when it comes to, and this is not just about regulation, but about control, because regulation is one piece, control of messaging, and that's a trend that we see kind of growing, particularly over the last couple of years in emerging markets, is operators, regulators wanting to control the use of messaging much more than they had in the past. There's a balance, because all the control that, as you bring control and regulation in, it makes the channel less attractive, less accessible, and it stunts growth. One of the challenges we've seen in some of these new IP-based channels is, because they're not open like SMS is, it's much harder for enterprise and brands to adopt them. It's more that there are more pain points, more barriers to entry, and that's one of the many reasons why some of those channels haven't yet taken off. So I think there can be a need for better regulation, but that regulation has to have the reach and the scope, and it needs to be balanced with ensuring that we keep the channels open and accessible.
Fantastic. Igor would like to either say, hey, that's a great comment, or you've got something to say.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, this is a great comment and great perspective being given by David. I have some statistics to support that statement. Maybe it's not strictly to SMS, but the studies show that only like more than half of telecom vendors would file more than 10 cases to law enforcement connected to telecom fraud. And the reasons that are given are actually, well, you could summarize them by saying that just under 80% of those would not provide enough cases for law enforcement. It's just because working in this technology environment with fast changing laws and regulations and just the general rules of the game is very challenging, just dealing with regulators. I mean, there could be just lack of interest. There could be lack of just understanding of what kind of fraud case is actually being there. There's obviously lack of trust in terms of judicial system being too long to prosecute, and then even after you win the case connected with telecom fraud, it would be taking a lot of time and resources just to recover those lost funds. So the thing is, it's a very difficult issue to deal with regulators in general, but what we see, especially in the recent years, with the enormous amount of attention being given to robocalls. I mean, I understand that this is not SMS, and perhaps we will not be expecting the same amount of attention to SMS in the coming 1 or 2 years, but it just shows that such a situation is changing. There's more and more attention from regulators to just deal with those things in a digital and voice and SMS traffic world. And we could expect more expertise in terms of regulators and just being more interest from regulators and the judicial system to the problems that we all face.
Okay, Larissa, over to you. What about education? Because I was talking to a regulator last year in a rather well-known country, and they were saying, oh, SIM farms are fine, there's no problem with them. This is true, there's fine, there's no problem with them whatsoever, because there was a total lack of education, awareness and understanding. What do you think we need to do? Because we've got companies of totally varying sizes represented right here on this webinar, and I don't know why, but my camera's dropped out. Can you hear me fine?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I haven't touched anything, so I'm going to blame Microsoft on this one. Sorry, Bill. But I haven't touched, my hands haven't touched anything. You can't see them, but I'm still here. What do we need to do in terms of education? So literally from the regulator down, all the way through mobile operators, all the 5 parts of the ecosystem that Vladimir presented, everything like that. And yeah, what do you think we need to do to educate more?
Well, yeah, we actually think at Intis Telecom that, well, in terms of artificial traffic generation, for example, we believe that enterprises need to make efforts on their side. They need to protect their software, their websites, and their applications first, because this is the only way to eliminate artificial traffic at all, like 100%. We can do some on our side, but it will not help to clear up everything. So yeah, we make a lot of effort to educate our clients, and we write some articles and we talk to them directly. We make a call, we explain how it works, and well, we calculate their revenue, well, everything, and we really spend a lot of time explaining how the things work here on this market.
I think it's a really good point, because at the end of the day, 95% of the listed businesses out there aren't even using SMS in their communication stack for mobile engagement with their customers. 95%, never mind the millions and millions of really small businesses that aren't listed anywhere. So the scope is huge. And if I was one of these companies, and how do I choose a good vendor? We all know the answer. Come to one of the companies on here or one of the members of the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. But the average company out there, they wouldn't have a clue. They go to Google, and where on earth do you start? So I think we've got a much better job to do as an ecosystem as a whole to educate certainly enterprises out there as a whole as to what we have to offer in terms of mobile engagement and SMS. Rajiv, believe it or not, we've only got 8 minutes to go. We've done 52 minutes out of 60 already. So we're going to be coming to the close. But the territories you operate in, I'm just keen to stick with this whole regulation issue, regulatory, because it comes back again and again, and it's mentioned in quite a few working groups across so many different areas. What's happened? Because India has taken a very, very tough line on spam. You've got blockchain technology, distributed DLT, distributed ledger technology in place and everything. Has the regulator been behind that, but enforcing that?
Yeah, the regulator has been behind that. Like I was just listening to the points which David mentioned. So definitely, like those regulators and the regulations, they can't like completely erode those fraudulent SMS, but definitely it has to be there. If we don't put any, so they are loose open. So definitely those regulations should be put in to like as a fencing wire, so that we can stop them at least. And in Asia, particularly, where like the SMS is growing like almost on a 20% each year, and in most of the countries, the regulations, they are getting stronger and stronger, and they're putting on more restrictions. And in India also, once we have implemented this DLT, and a lot of like spamming has like stopped, and there are a lot of phases where we try to match the sender ID, the content, and the enterprises who send that, so that we can track it back, like which enterprises were sending those, and so those spam messages can be tracked back where they were sending. Long number messaging, the SIM farming, like we were discussing. So that is like getting stopped day by day, and they are getting a hold of those SIM bankers, so who were used to operate those SIM banks. So, yeah, so regulations have definitely helped, at least in India. So that should be implemented in more countries in the nearby areas.
Okay, so we've got some clear examples of where regulation has helped. So we're coming up to the close. Vladimir, I haven't spoken to you for quite a long time because you had rather a lot of time at the beginning. So I've tried to divide things up amongst everybody. But closing remarks on this topic, we could literally have this webinar for 2 or 3 hours. We've only got 60 minutes together. What would you say we as an ecosystem need to do to really get to grips? Because Kevin has a very good point. We've been talking about this. I've been talking about this issue with him personally since 2013 when I first met him. And we've still broadly got the same issues in play. But what do we really need to do to get control on this? And will we be able to get the control we want on this topic?
Well, evidently it is. It sounds like something fantastic to get rid of all the fraud within the ecosystem, and I think even in the report that I mentioned, the mobile operators themselves were saying that okay, 5–10% of fraud is still okay, right? So we do understand we will not be able to to win all the fraud within the industry. So, but I agree with Kevin. It's good to do a review to understand how big it is. So, like, there is more people who actually agrees on the amount of fraud within the ecosystem, and then make a plan. Like, even if within math we could do that within the working group, plan our next steps based on the review, then I think we will be slowly getting there. And as I mentioned before, more and more people joining and signing the code of conduct, and especially the enterprises that should be interested in working with the signatories of SMS code of conduct, because they will feel more secure, would be the good thing.
Okay, thank you. And now we're closing. I can see some questions, specific one about the Spanish registry, etc. Don't have time to answer that one right now. But Kevin, is there anything we as an industry are not doing that do you think are fairly easy wins, or should be easy wins for the industry to get a handle on this situation, that everyone should be doing?
Yeah, I think that what I would say is it's really important to make sure that the back door is closed. If you focus on the front door all the time, you've also got to think about the back door. And what I mean by that is there's an incredible array of enhanced technologies out there from superb security vendors that enable us as players in this ecosystem to ensure that we're highly compliant, that we're investing in the kind of systems that we believe are beneficial for some of our partners, that we demonstrate, we walk the walk and we talk the talk. And I think my comment there is make sure that you invest in these enhanced kind of security solutions that exist out there, URL scanning and spam, and making sure that you protect the consumers first. I think is always at the heart of what we do here. We're not going to evolve as an industry if we don't protect the consumers who use our services.
Okay, great. So I know everyone talks in this area about, oh, all the operators need SMS firewall, they need SS7 firewall. I would say yes and yes to both of those things. But David, very, very quickly, what about the big messaging players and the aggregators? Do you think they themselves have enough technology and systems and processes in place to actually monitor all the traffic and do their bit properly?
I think technology is generally quite good. I think there's more that could be done. I think for me, the area that has the most opportunity is through cooperation, and that whether that's just simply between companies like ourselves and our customers talking to each other, understanding where that fraud's occurring and what both sides of the fence can do to help mitigate that, but also across the industry. And one of the things I like about the MEF Sender ID registry, whilst on its own, I don't think it's going to solve every problem, it's a good step in the right direction because it creates the openness that's been lacking in our industry. And I think if there are more initiatives like that give that openness, I think that could be hugely impactful.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So we're a minute away from close. I'm surprised it took this long, but we have a question. Is RCS the new SMS? We could spend an hour or 2 hours talking about that. Well, the quick answer is it's sometimes. Go on, David.
We have 2 minutes. I'd like to invite whoever posted that question. They're welcome to connect to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to talk to that, having worked extensively in the RCS stack over the last few years.
Fantastic. Yeah, the answer is it's informally known as SMS 2.0, but it's far more than that. It's a fantastic channel, particularly I think personally in customer support and with the chatbot capability. But there we go. That's a different issue. We're 30 seconds away from the close, and all that remains for me to do is to thank all the speakers today. Thank you, Lanck Telecom, in particular, for sponsoring it. Igor, lovely seeing you again. Vladimir, Rajiv, great to see you on here, and I look forward to seeing a good number of you actually in person very soon at Mobile World Congress. We start off on this Mobile World Congress Sunday at the MEF meetup, which is kindly sponsored actually by Globe Teleservices. So thanks to you folks for that. Look forward to seeing you there. Larissa, as always, great to have you on the panel with me. Thank you. And appreciate it's very, very late with you. David, good seeing you, and I'll see you soon. And likewise, Kevin, you haven't got too far to go, I think, to Mobile World Congress.
Not too far.
Not too far at all, sir. Just literally down the road. So thank you all very much, and thank you for being here. And we will be back with another MEF Live webinar in a few weeks. But in the meantime, I look forward to seeing many of you in person in Barcelona. And thank you for joining me. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.